suggestion from last week's show. Someone wanted to know how to make a rolled handle. So I pulled out my Sublime bag. This is technically sort of like a faux rolled handle. It has the look of a rolled handle, but without any cotton cording in the middle. So what I'm going to show you tonight is how to make an actual rolled handle with actual cording in the handle. So I'm going to step over to the side camera and show you how to make it. Okay, so first let me show you the two examples that I prepared before the show. So I made two rolled handles using different widths of cotton cording. So this first one was made using this cotton cording. It's 9/32 of an inch, and depending on what country you live in, different brands or different widths might be available. But this is the cotton cording that I used for this particular rolled handle. And then I also made one that was slightly thicker. So this one was made using 3/8 of an inch cotton cording, and let me show you the packaging for that. This was Wright's 3/8 of an inch polyester filler cord. So this one's a little bit different. As you can see, it's got little strands wrapped around the cotton cording, and this one was sort of more of a braided look. So any type or width will be fine. I've sort of drafted my templates so that it'll work with different thicknesses, because I know different countries have access to different products. In the link in the description, I've drafted pattern pieces for actually two different styles of rolled handles. So the one that I just showed you is sort of a squared handle. Let me show you that again. So that's the squared handle. And then I also drafted a second template for a rolled handle. So depending on which style you like better, you'll just need to print out one page of the templates and then cut them out. So you'll be cutting them out along the outside of the black line. And again, you'll choose one or the other, so either squared or rolled. Okay, so I went ahead and cut out my pattern piece before the show. So I'm going to use the rolled handle for this demonstration. So you'll use fabric that can be cut and left raw. So either cork fabric, leather, faux leather, vinyl, wool, anything that can be cut and left raw. You want to cut out 2 pieces for one bag. You'll also need to cut out 2 squares that are 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and that's listed on your template sheet as well. And you'll also need 2 pieces of the cotton cording, so whichever size you decide to go with. I definitely recommend using some Scotch tape and placing it on the ends, either before or right after you cut them, to keep the ends from unraveling, which is pretty common. And let me show you how to start putting everything together. So I'm going to start marking on the wrong side of my fabric. I'm going to take my ruler and my fabric pen, and I'm going to measure 1.5 inches up from this bottom edge and just draw a line. And these lines will just help with placing of the cotton cording so that you make sure you have it right in the center. And you don't have to draw the line all the way to the end. Just within that sort of dip over there will be fine. So I'm also going to draw a second line that's 1.5 inches down from the top edge. So it'll create sort of like a gap for you to lay down that cotton cording. So I'm going to use some fabric glue. I'm using Beacon 3-in-1. Other brands are fine. Beacon also makes another glue called Fabric Tack, which I like a lot too. I like the Beacon brand glues because they tend not to be as runny as some other fabric glues that I've tried, which is really nice for bag making, especially when you're using some metal hardware like twist locks, so it's not dripping all over the place. So I'm just going to lay my glue right down that middle line. And then I'm going to place the cotton cording right on top of the glue, and you want to make sure that you're laying it down so that it's straight. Okay, so now I'm going to take these 2 squares and I'm going to place them wrong sides together with this end of the tab. The reason we're using these squares is so the wrong side of the tab is finished with the same fabric that the right side is finished with. Okay, so I'm going to place some of the fabric glue on each of the tab ends as well. And I'm going to lay my ruler next to the tab end. So I'm going to lay my ruler so that it's even with the edge where it kind of dips out, because I'm going to place my fabric 1 inch up from that area, and you want it centered, so it's going to cover both sides. So I'm just going to press down, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other end as well. I'm going to place some glue down over here. And then I'm going to place my other square again. It's going to be 1 inch up from this edge where that cutout is, so to speak. Okay, so you want to give the glue enough time to dry. So I'm going to put this piece to the side, and I have a second piece that I've prepared earlier so that I have glue that's dried already. Okay, so I'm going to flip to the right side of my handle tab, and I'm going to cut the fabric out so that the layers are even. And if you're nervous at all about cutting out so that the fabric layers are even, you can always cut this layer so that it's slightly smaller so that it's not overhanging. That's completely fine. It's really important to have the 2 layers of fabric here, because having just 1 layer of cork in a handle attached to the bag is really, I'd be worried about the strength. So I really like the 2 layers of the cork instead, or leather or vinyl, whatever you're using. Okay, so I'm just cutting that out quickly. You'll obviously want to take a little more care and get it as close to the top layer as possible. Okay, so I'm also going to flip to the back, the wrong side. And we don't need this extra fabric over here past where sort of the cutout is, so I'm just sort of going to angle it and cut off the ends like this. We basically just need this extra layer to be covering some of the cotton cording, so when you attach it to your tab to the bag, you don't see cotton cording showing on the wrong side of your handle. Okay, so at this point you can either just use straight up Wonder Clips. I decided to use some Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape here, and I'm going to place some like basically down the center of this half. And Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape is just a double-sided tape. I use it often, especially when I'm installing zippers. It makes zipper pocket installation super easy. Okay, so I'm just going to push that down and remove the paper to release the second side of the adhesive. And then I'm just going to fold the long edge so that it meets the other end over here. And I'm going to place some Wonder Clips. Don't worry about getting it perfectly exactly wrong sides together, because I've allowed for extra fabric, so we'll be trimming most of this away later. Okay, so I'm going to take my ruler out one more time, and if you have a little bit of overhang over here, you can just go ahead and trim that away before we start taking this over to the sewing machine. This is a very forgiving rolled handle and easy to get your edges aligned if you need to do a little tweaking over there. So I'm going to take my fingers and just kind of push them to seal that tape in and push that cotton cording in toward that center crease. And I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure 1 inch away from this area where the cutout is. And you can just go ahead and draw that on your fabric right there. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Again, that's going to be 1 inch away from this cutout area. So we're only going to be sewing from one marking to the other. We're not sewing all the way to the end. Okay, so I went ahead and sewed one before the show so that I could quickly show you what it looks like. I think you can see my stitches pretty well on camera. So I took my zipper foot and I sewed as close to the cotton cording as I could, again starting at that 1 inch marking and stopping at the second 1 inch marking. If you're using a zipper foot on leather or vinyl and you're finding that your foot is sticking, one tip that I found, I don't remember who gave this tip, but somebody mentioned it in the Facebook group some time back, but she mentioned that cornstarch is great for using in an area where if you don't have a Teflon foot, if you're finding your foot sticking, laying some cornstarch on your fabric is great because you can just brush it off when you're done, or you can put some painter's tape on the bottom of your foot. I used cork fabric, so I just used my regular sewing machine foot for this. But again, I just sewed as close to the cotton cording as I could. Okay, so what happens next is I'm going to take my Wonder Clips off and I'm going to trim the fabric as close to the stitching as I can, but I'm trying my best to sew in to cut it in a uniform line. So you can either use your ruler and your rotary cutter. I'm actually going to use my scissors just because I trust myself more to get a closer line to the scissors. Perhaps not on the show. I find I always get more nervous when I'm on the show trying to do a live demonstration in case something goes wrong, but I'm just cutting as close to the stitching as I can. Just be careful not to cut into your stitching. And if you like the ends of your cork or leather or whatever to match your fabric, you can use, there's several products out there. One's called Edge Coat, but you can paint that on there just so that matches your fabric, and if it doesn't bother, you can just leave it as is. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the ends. I'm just going to go ahead and curve that fabric so that it forms a continuous line. As you can see, there's kind of like a little bump over there. Just go ahead and snip that off and check the other end as well. And you'll just repeat the same process for the second rolled handle. You can either attach this to the front and back of your bag by hand or by machine. My machine will sew through this just fine. I would recommend sewing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric and then coming over in a straight line if you prefer, or if you just like to sew the sides, you can as well. And that's the rolled handle. This is what the rounded handle looks like. And again, here's my squared off handle. So as you can see, pretty easy. No crazy supplies needed to make that rolled handle. And it was fast and easy. And then you just go ahead and attach it to your bag before you start sewing everything together. Obviously for the Sublime bag, it's got some accents, so I attached my accents first, and then my handle followed that. So I'd like to invite you now, if you enjoy our live shows, if you enjoy my tutorial videos or my bag making videos, if you're watching on Facebook, if you could go ahead and hit the share button right now. Share